Saturday, 10:17 a.m., Eddington County, Alabama. It started like a scene no one would remember, just another rusty sedan humming down a sleepy southern street. The kind of car that turned no heads. The kind of driver who, in this town, got noticed for the wrong reasons. Althea Morrison sat behind the wheel in a gray hoodie, sunglasses, and jeans. No uniform. No visible rank. No bodyguards or flags. Just a quietly determined woman driving through a place where her skin tone had always spoken louder than her words. She knew the risks. But this wasn't just any drive. She was conducting a classified audit, one initiated directly from the Pentagon, to investigate racial profiling and abuse of power in law enforcement across small-town America. The plan was simple: blend in, document, and stay quiet. But some plans don't last past the first red light. As she turned onto Jefferson Avenue, the blue lights flared behind her. A sheriff's cruiser, tailgating aggressively. She slowed, pulled over, kept both hands on the steering wheel. A figure approached, Officer Brad Keller, white, mid-30s, chewing tobacco, mirrored shades. He didn't say hello, didn't ask how her day was. Just, license and registration. Althea nodded calmly. Of course, officer. Her voice was even, respectful. She handed him her license, which read, Althea Morrison. He squinted. Where are you headed? Just driving through, visiting someone. From D.C.? He looked at her license again. Is this your car? Yes, it is. He didn't move, just stared at her for a moment too long. Then, step out of the vehicle. Althea blinked. I'm sorry? Step out of the car. His tone left no room for confusion. May I ask what the reason is, officer? His jaw clenched. Your tag's faded. I can't verify it. It could be stolen, and you're acting nervous. She wasn't. But in this town, being composed while black was a crime in itself. Althea opened the door slowly. She stepped out, hands visible, body calm. Put your hands on the hood. Officer, if you just run the tag. He stepped forward, grabbed her wrist, and twisted her arm behind her back. She didn't resist. Don't move, he growled, pressing the cold steel of handcuffs onto her skin. The passers-by slowed to stare. A few filmed with their phones. One man across the street chuckled. To them, she was just another black woman in trouble. Brad Keller shoved her against the hood of his cruiser. You military or something? He sneered, having noticed the small dog tag on her keychain. I serve, she said evenly, and I advise you to radio this in. He ignored her. We'll figure it out down at the station. No lawyer, no phone call, not yet, he muttered. Althea exhaled slowly. The cold steel of the cuffs was familiar, but this wasn't a battlefield. It was an ambush in plain daylight. She glanced at the black digital watch on her wrist, a gift from the Pentagon. Nothing flashy, just one button on the side. She pressed it, twice. Nothing happened. Not yet. 10:26 a.m. Eddington County Sheriff's Station. The steel door creaked open with a sound that felt older than the building itself. Officer Keller gripped Althea's arm tightly than necessary as he marched her through the dim corridor. Her wrists were still cuffed behind her back. Her hoodie was damp with sweat from the Alabama sun, but her posture remained upright, regal even. Inside the booking area, two deputies looked up. One raised an eyebrow. Who's that? Pulled her off Jefferson, Keller grunted. Suspicious tags. Got attitude, said she was military. You checked the system? The second deputy asked. Don't need to. Anyone can print a fake license and dog tag off Amazon. The deputies chuckled. Althea said nothing. Her silence wasn't weakness. It was an assessment. She scanned the room. 2 exits, 1 camera, unplugged. The computer screen showed an open file on a robbery from 2 days ago. A white man. No one had been arrested. Figures. Keller pushed her onto a hard bench. Sit tight while we figure out who you really are. Althea leaned back. You could just run my name through DOD, she said, calm as ever. I'll decide what I run, he snapped. She looked at him. Finally looked. Not with anger, not even pity. Just calculation. That unsettled him more than if she'd screamed. 10:41 a.m. Time moved differently in custody. Slower. Heavier. Every tick of her watch echoed like a drumbeat behind her spine. A younger officer entered the room, barely more than 22, name tag reading Martinez. He paused when he saw Althea. Hey, you okay, ma'am? Before Althea could speak, Keller barked, Martinez, grab the intake forms. The kid hesitated, then left. Althea watched the door close. That was her first note. Not everyone here was the same, but most were. Keller returned with a clipboard and a smirk. So, Althea Morrison, lives in D.C., driving a busted car. No criminal record. He frowned. How the hell does someone like you end up with a DoD clearance on file? She smiled faintly. Because I earned it. He slammed the clipboard down. Don't play with me. You're not being played, Officer Keller. You're just not listening. Keller stared at her for a moment, jaw tight. Tell me the truth. Right now, who are you really? She tilted her head. You already missed the chance to ask that with respect. He paced for a second, then leaned in close. You think you're going to scare me with this act? You're in a sheriff's station in Eddington County. We don't bow down to federal noise. I don't care if you're the damn mayor of D.C. Out here, I run the show. Althea blinked once. Not for long. That stopped him. Excuse me? She didn't repeat herself. 10:54 a.m. It had been 37 minutes since she pressed the beacon on her watch. And the silence? That was the warning. Althea knew the Pentagon. She knew protocol. First, they monitored, then they confirmed. Then they moved quietly. She didn't need sirens, she needed precision. And it was coming. Meanwhile, Officer Keller finally entered some information into the station's terminal. He tapped her name. What appeared on the screen made him blink. U.S. Department of Defense. Restricted Clear General Althea Morrison. Position: Deputy Director, Homeland Strategic Operations Command. Security level Omega-7, verified response protocol, red shield. He squinted. What the hell is Omega-7? Then, before he could click further, the screen froze. A black pop-up appeared. This file has been temporarily locked by order of the U.S. Department of Defense. Please remain in place. A federal officer will be in contact shortly. Keller took a step back. No. He turned to look at her. Althea was still sitting on the bench, still cuffed, still silent. But now, her eyes were locked on him, and she smiled. A black SUV rolled to a quiet stop near the station entrance. No lights, no sirens, just 4 figures emerging. Suits, shades, earpieces, calm, efficient. 2 of them peeled off and walked around the back. A delivery truck parked across the street blinked twice. Its driver nodded, then climbed out and pulled a crate labeled janitorial supply. Inside wasn't bleach, it was gear. The system was moving. And Officer Brad Keller didn't even realize that his job, his badge, and his career were about to be measured in minutes. She didn't yell, she didn't beg. She just pressed a button, and the Pentagon came alive. Officer Keller stood in front of the frozen computer terminal, his mouth half open, his brain trying to catch up. He tapped the keyboard again. Nothing. The screen remained black with a single glowing message. Do not attempt to access. Federal intervention en route. He turned around sharply, eyes locked on Althea. You some kind of spook? CIA? She didn't answer. That was worse than a yes. Her expression hadn't changed. No rage, no threat, just quiet, unsettling certainty. That look, unbothered by his authority, his badge, his threats, was now crawling under his skin like fire ants. He reached for the phone, called his captain. Cap, I think we have a situation. 1,000 miles away, inside a secure briefing room deep under the Pentagon's reach. Red indicators lit up across multiple screens. 1 blinking dot. Omega-7 clearance. Activating a code black. 2 generals and a Pentagon liaison stood silently as a classified feed from Eddington County loaded into a 3D map of the region. It showed law enforcement positions, cell tower activity, traffic flow, and body cam locations, even though the body cam at Keller's chest was technically off. It wasn't off anymore. Confirm ID, one general ordered. A tech officer replied. Confirmed. Major General Althea Morrison, status in custody. Charges unfiled, contact denied. Jesus, the liaison muttered. She's undercover. The general didn't blink. Scramble, Homeland Command Response Team, Bravo. No chopper, go black route. Within seconds, a command rippled out across encrypted frequencies. The wheels were in motion. The quiet town hadn't changed. The same dog lay sleeping on a porch. The same coffee shop served the same bitter drip. The same church bells rang half past the hour. But the town didn't know it had become a battlefield. 3 black SUVs now circled a 5-block perimeter in seemingly casual patterns. One parked near the sheriff's department. A man with an Acme pest control patch on his chest exited and leaned into a phone call that didn't exist. He was scanning thermal signatures through his lenses. Inside the station, Officer Martinez returned to the holding area, holding a tray with a sandwich and water. Here you go, ma'am, he said softly. Althea nodded. Thank you. He set it down. His eyes glanced at her wrists. Then, at the computer screen, still frozen. "Is everything okay?" he asked. Before she could respond, Keller re-entered, face flushed. "Martinez, out." The younger officer hesitated, looked once more at Althea, then left. Keller stared her down. "Whatever stunt you pulled, it's not gonna work. I got friends in the DA's office." Althea tilted her head. "You should call them, now." Something about the way she said that, so calm, so confident, made him falter. Then, the first vibration. Not a sound. A subtle shift in the building, like the air itself had changed density. Outside, two officers chatting near the station's rear exit paused as a nondescript delivery truck pulled up. "Who ordered supplies?" "I didn't," one muttered. The back of the truck opened. Inside were two men and a woman in janitorial uniforms. They moved with eerie efficiency. One lifted a mop bucket. Another pulled a crate labeled bleach tablets. "Back entrance unlocked?" the woman asked. The officer shrugged. "Yeah?" They entered silently. Inside a surveillance van, disguised as a landscaping vehicle, a man with a buzz cut and two stripes on his collar watched the feeds. "All teams in position," he spoke into his mic. "Initiate silent incursion." Through hidden comms, his voice echoed inside the station's bathroom, the ceiling vent above the holding area, and even the janitor cart, now rolling past Keller's desk. A second later, the tech feed from Keller's disabled body cam came alive, streaming directly to the Pentagon's operations center. They were watching. Everything. Althea lifted the cup of water and took a slow sip. Keller leaned against the wall, trying to act like he still had control. Then came the knock. Soft. 3 times. Keller frowned. "Yeah?" The door opened slowly. A man in a maintenance uniform stepped inside, except that his posture was too straight and his eyes were too focused. "I need access to the sub-panel," the man said. "Power systems unstable." Keller frowned. "What? We didn't call." The man stepped forward. "Eddington County's power grid flagged an anomaly. If I don't check it, the system could fry." Keller huffed. "Fine, make it fast." As the man crouched, he looked once at Althea, just for a split second. She blinked once. The man nodded, then placed a small sensor under the table and walked out. The countdown had begun. A general leaned forward. "All teams are green. Target confirmed. Civilians, minimal. Resistance, probable." He looked at the screen where Keller's confused, red face stared back. "Let's wake him up." The janitor disappeared as quickly as he arrived, leaving only a faint smell of chemical citrus and a blinking red sensor under the intake desk, small enough to miss, precise enough to change everything. Althea sat, calm. The steel cuffs still cut into her wrists, but she didn't wince. That was never her way. Keller muttered under his breath as he paced the room, glancing at the frozen terminal every few seconds. The longer it stayed locked, the more his ego deflated. She watched him unravel in slow motion. And then the front door opened. But not like before. It didn't creak, it hissed. 3 figures entered, dressed in civilian clothes, but there was nothing ordinary about the way they moved. Every step was sharp, calculated, and fluid. The lead, tall woman with silver-streaked hair and eyes like stone, flashed a badge so fast Keller barely caught the emblem. "DHS, Tier 1 security clearance. We need to speak to your commanding officer. Now." Keller stiffened. "Who are you? You can't just walk in." "Agent Celeste Rowe, Homeland Strategic Operations," the woman snapped, flipping her badge open again and stepping right up to his face. "This facility is under emergency review. Bring us to your captain. Immediately." He blinked, confused. "We don't have a captain, just Sheriff Doolin." "Then get him, and unlock that door." She pointed toward the holding area, where Althea watched the entire exchange like a chess master watching pawns wander into a trap. Keller's hand trembled slightly as he reached for the comms. "Sheriff Doolin to intake. Urgent." No reply. He tried again, still nothing. The lead agent's earpiece crackled. "Perimeter secured. Internal override complete. We have full comm control." "Copy," she said, then turned back to Keller. "You've just been cut off from state and county channels. You're on federal time now." Sheriff Walt Doolin was eating a microwaved burger when his deputy burst through the door. "There are people here," the deputy blurted. "Fed types saying this is a federal operation." "What people?" Doolin said, still chewing. "Tell them to wait." "Sir, one of them said something about Omega-level breach and mentioned the Pentagon." That stopped the chewing. Walt stood up slowly. "Where is Keller?" "Down in booking." "Then let's go before he does something stupid." "Too late." The moment the sheriff walked in, Agent Rose spoke without turning. "Sheriff Doolin, this station is now under temporary federal control under Section 41F of Homeland Security Emergency Protocol." Doolin raised both hands, palms up. Whoa, you can't just walk in here barking orders." "We can. And we did." She cut him off. "One of your officers has detained a high-ranking U.S. Army general without probable cause, with the use of excessive force, on U.S. soil." Keller's jaw dropped. "Wait, what?" Agent Rose stepped aside and pointed at Althea, still cuffed, still composed. "That woman is Major General Althea Morrison, Deputy Director of Homeland Strategic Ops, and you," she glared at Keller, "have committed a felony under Title 18, Section 242. The room fell into a vacuum. The sheriff's burger hit the floor before his mouth could close. Keller took one slow step back, face paling. "She didn't say she was a general." "She did," Althea said, standing up. Her voice was still soft, but it carried more weight than a judge's gavel. "You just didn't listen." Agent Rowe nodded to the other operatives. One moved forward and gently removed the cuffs from Althea's wrists. "Ma'am," he said, "you're secure now." Althea flexed her fingers. They were red and swollen, but she didn't complain. Instead, she turned to face Keller directly. "You were more interested in dominating a stranger than protecting your badge," she said. "You assumed, profiled, escalated, and violated federal law. Because my skin told you a story, my voice didn't get a chance to finish." Keller swallowed hard. I didn't know." "That's the problem," she replied. "You never cared to." Reporters were gathering. Somehow, word had leaked, likely from the command van. A classified military oversight operation had hit Eddington County like a freight train, and the press smelled blood. 2 Homeland agents stepped outside and quietly began coordinating the perimeter lockdown. Inside, the agents escorted Althea through the hallway. Officers along the way turned their heads. Some stepped back, some saluted. Sheriff Doolin jogged behind them. "General Morrison, I assure you this is all a misunderstanding. You allow officers to make up charges, detain citizens without cause, and operate without working body cams," she said without looking at him. "That's not a misunderstanding, Sheriff. That's a culture." A long silence followed. Then, "What happens now?" She paused at the exit. "You'll be hearing from the Pentagon," she said simply, "and the Department of Justice." Inside the van, Agent Rowe handed Althea a tablet. It showed real-time footage of Keller pacing in the corner of the booking room, head in hands. "We've locked all station data. Your internal report?" Althea tapped the screen. "Filed. Mission complete." Rowe nodded. "Would you like to press formal charges?" Althea looked at the screen for a moment longer. "Not yet." "Why not?" She turned to the camera, to the lens pointed at Keller, to the symbol of a system trying to avoid its own reflection. "Because I'd rather let the nation see what happens," she said. "I want the world to hear the apology before they hear the defense." In breaking news from Alabama, a U.S. Army general was mistakenly detained by local law enforcement this morning in what federal officials are calling a case of gross misconduct. An ongoing internal investigation is underway. The sheriff's department has declined to comment. Althea sat in the back seat of a black SUV as it rolled away from the town that had tried to break her and failed. She glanced down at her wrists, the marks still faint. Then she looked up and said to the driver, "Next stop, Washington." Inside a soundproof briefing room, Major General Althea Morrison stood before a long row of top military officials, Department of Justice representatives, and members of Civil Rights Watch. No notes, no podium. Just her. Behind her, a silent video played. Officer Keller handcuffed her by the roadside, ignoring her ID, mocking her military tag. And finally, the look on his face when he realized who she was. But Althea didn't talk about herself. She spoke about those who didn't have rank, who couldn't press a button to alert the Pentagon, who had no drone feeds or federal eyes watching overhead. The ones who got cuffed and silenced, and no one ever found out. "I don't want sympathy," she said. "I want structural correction." A Pentagon official lowered his head. A congressional observer wiped a tear. And that very day, a draft resolution was submitted. The Morrison bill requires routine racial bias audits across all local law enforcement agencies. Sheriff Walt Doolin announced his resignation on live television. Officer Brad Keller was federally indicted for unlawful detention, excessive force, and violation of military protocol. Drone footage, internal body cam backups, and federal reports confirmed one thing. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was systemic behavior exposed under pressure. But what stirred the nation most wasn't the charges. It was General Morrison's response to the media. When a journalist asked, "Why didn't you fight back? Why didn't you yell? Post the video yourself," she smiled gently, "Because I didn't need to scream to be heard. I just needed people to finally start listening." A documentary titled The Quiet Power aired across major U.S. networks. It told the full story, from the arrest to the Pentagon's silent intervention. At the end, her voice carried the closing narration. When people don't hear you unless you raise your voice, you assume yelling is your only weapon. But sometimes, silence unsettles more than noise. It makes the abusers hear themselves. And when you stand there, calm, unshaken, immovable, you don't need power. You are powerful. General Morrison's speech became required viewing for all incoming cadets in the civil military ethics course. The inscription behind the podium, where she had once stood, was updated to read, "Honor doesn't shout. It stands still until the world can't ignore it." She didn't file a civil suit. She didn't demand an apology. She didn't seek revenge. She just wanted them to learn. And for the first time in a long time, they did.